Hi, my name is Cheryl and welcome to another Floral Share video. We've done a workshop series where we have been looking at the element of shape. We've looked at circles and triangles. There's one that's missing, and that's square. And that's because it's not done very often in the industry. The reason being, it's a little structured and a little boring. It's usually a square box that's a centerpiece, sits on the table with little rows of flowers, and that's called Pavé design style. We'll get into that later, but it's not one of my favorites. And I thought there has to be a way that we can present square that's easy and fun and very versatile. I think I've come up with a solution that's going to be really easy for you to do, a lot of fun too. It is two right angle designs, which we've done triangle. This is just two triangles that we're actually going to put together and then cross it over. We're going to make this out of sticks because chicks like sticks. I'm going to put one here, and then one across. You might find that there's a little bit of a problem connecting this bottom one. The reason being, we've got two design bowls here with our oasis. How are we going to put that stick in there without being able to bend it? We've got a solution. The other one was transport. This is just two design bowls. They're kind of individuals. We need to put this on a slab of some kind of piece of wood. A little bit tricky, but I think it's fun. I can't wait to show you how to do square. Let's get started. Let's get set up. I have two design bowls that I've already put in a third of a piece of oasis, and I've done an X on this instead of your standard crisscross because I want to be able to access the sides all the way around on these pieces. And then I have this little board. I've already glued this one down. I have this little board I found at the grocery store. It's nothing more than one of those little cedar planks that I think you poach or grill fish on. It ended up being a great size. It is 16 inches, 16 by 7.5. So it ended up just being the perfect size for what we're going to do today. I've got some sticks that I had from a fall bunch that I just keep all my stuff and I use it over and over again for all the different seasons. Remember, we talked about we're going to do the sticks vertically, but before I get there, I want to connect these two. I have a little short stick. This measures about 10 1/4. Going to place this first right in the center. Just going to glide it right in. Put it in about 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to glue this and then quickly move it. Okay. I tried the E2000 type of glue. I didn't like it because these little design bowls have feet on them and it just didn't want to adhere quickly or levelly enough. Okay, so I'm going to slide it in and then boom, right down. We've got our first stick. Simple as that. Now I'm going to find two pieces that are relatively the same and straight if I can. And this measures, I think it was 18 inches. Let me just break this out. Oh no, I was way out, 26 inches. And I'm not going to go in the center, of course, because I have tape there. I'm going to move this back to a 3/4 back and just pop it in. And I want this to be stable, so hit the bottom with this. And then we can move on to the next one and do the same exact thing all the way down. Okay. Simple, simple, simple. We've got the start of our two right angles right here. Now I want to bring something right across here, crisscross them so that I get this fabulous texture on both sides. All right, what I have is, I think it's 28 gauge. You wouldn't want to go any heavier than say a 24 because it's just going to be too stiff to try to bend around these really delicate little pieces. Okay, so I'm going to hold this here and slip that through. This allows me to kind of just give it a nice little bend and kind of thread the needle. Of course, as always, I could probably have my glasses on and this would make life so much easier. Okay. And this is so fine you won't even be able to see it. And then let's do the other side. Try to get that as level as possible. Just be a moment and then we can start the fun stuff. All right, there we go. All right, we have started our square. Love it. Yeah, there we go. I think that's great. Now we get to decorate this part right down here. So let me get all of my good stuff. Come right back. All right, so this is complete, but what I want to do is add a little bit more texture right down here. And I've just kind of cut up some little pieces that I'm going to slide in. And then that way I'm mimicking the same texture up here. And put together, yeah, right like that. There. Now my square is complete. I've got the same texture up and below. Now we can start adding flowers. So now we're going to start creating some interest right in through here. When you're doing this square, we want to really make sure that we are not impeding in this negative space right here. So just a little bit of accent right here in front. We'll put some greens back in through here and maybe a few berries, and that's going to be it. It's really a very basic arrangement. I already ran into a little bit of a challenge that you're going to find whenever you're working with flowers. What I have are these beautiful little spray roses. They're one of my favorites because they're just so very delicate and versatile, and they come in great colors. And when I picked up the package, I was hoping that they would all look like this. And you can see that they're nice little tight clusters. And if I had 4, it'd be really easy to work with, wouldn't it? Well, what I'm going to have to do is take this one and cut it apart and basically make it look like that other little cluster. I'm certainly not going to have it up here. We're going to balance everything right down here. So let's get started with that. I'm just going to cut these little bits up. And I think this one right here. Yeah. So this now is about the same length as these others. So I think I can make this work. That's one thing with Floral, and you've got this thing that's organic. There's not a guarantee that you're going to get the same thing. You know, you do 4 or 5 bridesmaids bouquets. There's no guarantee that they're all going to be exactly the same size because your flowers are not going to be exactly the same. All right, so before I go too far, I think what I'm going to do is put one on this other side, and then I can gauge a little bit better about how far I need to go with this one. I want the heaviest out of the 3, and this seems to have the largest blooms. Okay. And I want it right here in front. This is going to be one of our focal flowers. All right, so I'm trying to create a focal point that's fairly equal on either side. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's good. We've got a little leftover baby, but that's all right. And then let's do one that's right in through here. Yeah, that should be good. And then one more. I think that's even. And what we're trying to do is get as even as possible. Let's get some greens in. We want to cover these mechanics, but I don't want to go too crazy. I do have some Floral. It's a little bit bigger than I usually like. I try to get it fairly small if I can, but again, beggars can't be choosers. It's whatever comes into the shop. I usually try to have a little something outside in the yard. You know, I'm a forager. Can't help it. If I've got it in the yard, I'm going to use it. As you know, my studio is in my home. It's not in a flower shop. And so there's plenty of times that I've forced to, let's go out in the yard and see what I can scrounge up. So we're talking about challenges, and for those of you that maybe you'll use this information and go into the floral industry, you're going to be faced with many interesting challenges. You know, one of my favorites, and I remember it to this day, is I had a gentleman that had passed, and the family wanted me to make a funeral piece that looked like his John Deere tractor, because he loved his John Deere. And it was my job to make a 2D floral tractor. I did it, and I was so proud of myself when I was done. Yeah, these leaves are definitely larger than I would have liked, and I'm using them singly because I am still trying to cover my mechanics. I know Floral can be a little challenging for a lot of beginners. I know that when I was just starting out, I did a lot with leather leaf. They also call it baker fern, and much more forgiving. But as you advance, you'll find that you really do want a lot of different textures in your pieces, and using all manner of greens is key. Okay, I don't want to go too far out because I don't want to cover this stick right here, because it is important to the design to show that we definitely have a square. And I think what I'm going to end up having to do is cover a lot of this with moss, which is really kind of cool. There's a couple of different mosses out there, and let me get what I like to use. I'm going to put this in the back to save some of it for later. Okay, this is a sheet moss. It's in a bucket of water. It's a little messy, but it covers really nicely when it's wet. And again, I foraged. I've got some nice property, and I went out in the yard, and where all these trees, I had all the sheet moss, and so I just gathered it up, and I brought it in, and I gave it a good vinegar soak, and what that does is help get rid of all the little buggies. And now I'm able to use this to cover up. You could use Spanish moss. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Spanish moss, and it's really easy to find just about anywhere. I think you can find it at almost all craft stores, even like Walmart has it, and of course you can get it on Amazon. And if you are in the South, you can find that it's covered, hanging on the trees. But again, you definitely have to do a vinegar soak because they have mites and different things. Discovered that on a trip to Savannah. They said the first settlers used the Spanish moss for bedding, and they quickly discovered it was full of all kinds of mites and bugs and stuff like that. You can see this is covering very, very nicely. Now, if I were to actually deliver this piece, I would have painted this board maybe a dark brown or even a black, just to kind of camouflage the design bowl a little bit more, and really highlight this structure more than just having it on this light wood. And then I probably wouldn't have to worry about putting moss down in through here, but you can certainly do that. Okay, so I think this is pretty even, but I want to give this a little spin. Boy, do I love this Lazy Susan for just that. I think that this really makes it so easy to be able to see the front and the back, especially with these larger pieces. Yeah, I think that thus far, I think that's where I want to go with this. And for those that are a little shorter, you could use a turntable cake stand. Gives you a little bit of a lift, especially if you've got a bit of short stuff going on. Any kind of trick that you can use. I'm going to go ahead and use some of my Kimberly Fern, and that how much I love my Kimberly fern, just because I just think that, again, it adds such great texture. And I'll put this stuff in everything. I feel like Frank's hot sauce. I put that stuff on everything. But I do. All right, one more. Let's see. Try to find a nice straight one to match this. I think this one. Okay. We're just giving this a little bit of lift so the arrangement has a continuum. No, I thought that was taller. I thought that was taller. Okay, let's play with that for a minute. Okay, because I just have to compensate for the curvature of the piece. So really what I've had to do is almost scoop it down a little bit so that it will have a little bit more of a backward trajectory and look straighter. I think that's about as good as I'm going to get that one. And then mimic the side over here. And then let's do another one. I think those are even. You know that's not going to fly with me. Chop them down considerably, just maybe bring them in. So the reason that I pulled that out, those two that were even in size, is because in nature, rarely are you going to find things that are lined up like little toy soldiers. That's one of the reasons why the square can be so difficult, because it is so structured. So what we're looking for is uneven lengths, because it's really more like how your plant would actually grow out in the garden, out in nature. And so that's what we're trying to do to a certain degree, is kind of mimic a little bit of what we see if we're walking outside. And the eye naturally really likes those kind of imbalances. It's just much more pleasing than those straight structured lines, because it's more natural. What I'm trying to do here is actually, because this is two right angles, and I still have to kind of bring something in through here to give that illusion of the right angle, is I want them to be as similar as possible. This is really going to emphasize the square. And because we haven't gone through the element of balance yet, I didn't want to get into something that was maybe bigger on this side and smaller on this side, because we're going to go there. It's one of my favorites. I love to do an unbalanced arrangement that has balance. But today what I'm looking for is something that is symmetrical on both sides. I have some Nandina berries. I was really looking for some Hypericum, which is a little bit easier to find in a flower shop. So of course I just raided the yard. Nandina is one of my favorites to have in the yard, just because it's so versatile. The greens change all year round, from green in the summer to, when we get into the fall, they start to take on like fire colors, lots of reds and oranges. And then for the holidays, I like to rob them and spray them with gold and silver for a lot of my Christmas arrangements. Very, very versatile. I always say every homeowner needs to have one of these. So the one downfall that they have is that the berries can drop really easily. And I have found that if I hit it with some really cheap hairspray a couple of times, that really does help kind of glue it in there a little bit. If I were going to deliver this to somebody's home, I would hit it with some clear spray paint, some maybe not mattify, but maybe like a semi-gloss, and that will really help those berries hold together. So what I want is something that's over on this side to give a little weight, and we'll put something over here too. You know, the reason that I get so concerned, you don't want your deliver something and somebody's pets get into the berries and different things. So I try to be aware of that. I just pulled that and they went pop, 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 pop. All right, and then one in through here, and I'm gonna need to spin it again just to make sure that I don't have wings over here. I feel like I might need to lower something. So let me spin this. Yeah, I think what I want is actually to pop this above and this one a little bit higher. Yeah, I really should have used paint for this. I was hoping that hairspray would do that, but I think it's been so hot where I am that they're struggling. I have just a few more little kind of spots that I want to dress up. I'm right in through here and in through here. I love this little trick. Let me show you. This is some lily grass. I love this. And actually, you can get this out in your yard too if you're lucky. Got my little handheld stapler. He's not my favorite. I'd rather one of the big boys, but I've got 3 of these together. I'm going to do a loop. I'm going to bring it around. I'm going to secure it with my fingers and then push the whole thing together and staple it. I actually think I have a little short that I might have made because I like this little texture so much. We're going to give him a snip. So he's got just a little bit of an edge here. And then I can pop him in right. Come on, you. Yeah, right there. This little piece I just think is so sweet, and I've done it for vase arrangements and someplace where I might just want just like a little bit of little flu-fla, little texture, just a little something that maybe your greens can't offer you. And I'm going to hold it together right here, and then those should slip in the oasis pretty easily. I think I caught maybe a bit of moss when I was trying to do that before. All right, let me see where we are. Do another spin. Hopefully I got those in the similar spots. Okay, a little bit off. A little bit off. Let me fix it. Okay, so you may have noticed that the back isn't perfect. Well, it needs to be. If this is something that you are going to deliver, you still want to cover all of your mechanics. Now, I'm not going to bore you with that. What do you think, guys? I think it came out great. It was really a very quick, easy, simple arrangement. I don't think this would be a stretch for a beginner, and it would be so incredibly versatile. You could, of course, use this for a memorial. You could have an urn here or a picture of your loved one, but it could also be maybe have a placard back here, say happy hour or menu for a wedding. I think this really is incredibly versatile arrangement. Let's talk money. It really was not a whole lot that I put in here. The sticks might have been, I don't know, $6, $7 for that little fall pack that I had found. Of course, there was quite a bit that I foraged. All in all, if I spent $25 on this, I would be just surprised. But honestly, I think I could probably charge somewhere up in the nature of $125 if this was for a funeral piece or event piece. Remember, funerals, events, you can always pop your labor up just a little bit more. And speaking of labor, usually it's like 50% labor that you add on to all of your materials. For event work and wedding, 75% is not unheard of. If you have any comments or questions about this, I would love to hear from you. Of course, you can always tag me on Instagram with what you've done, because man, I love to see what you create from these lessons. And a shout out from where you're watching from, that's fun too, because we have gotten global. Guys, I'll see you the next time.